My fellow South Carolinians, today is day one of my campaign for governor of South Carolina.
Well, there it is, the special announcement by Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evette we talked about last week here on Connect to the Capitol, and that is where we begin on this Sunday in South Carolina with more gubernatorial politics. And we're going to bring in our usual friends, Catherine Glenn Foster and Dave Wilson, to talk about this. You know, we joked that she was declaring for the NBA, but we all knew what it was going to be.
Turns out we were wrong.
We were wrong. And that never happens.
No, not in South Carolina politics. No, not at all.
That never happens. Yeah. But we knew this was going to happen. No big surprise. But now it makes it official. We have 3 people in the governor's race right now. So let's talk about it.
We're already looking at a crowded primary, and that war chest is what really we're eyeing at this point. Those dollars that she already is bringing in and depositing into that bank account.
Now, I find it a little ironic that you raise $1 million in 24 hours.
In a day.
And so let's just talk about the real math on this real quick.
Because that came out, trust me, the campaign emails were blasted out. They were proud of that fact.
They were doing that, but let's talk about the reality. That money sits over here, and until that announcement comes out, it doesn't go into the campaign account. And that's the thing about this. Yes, she's got $1 million that's gone in. That is a huge number. I don't care who you are in this particular race. $1 million is a lot of money. Was it raised in the last 24 hours? I don't think it was raised 24 hours after her announcement. I think it's been sitting in the
this works.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've been around the block on this one a little bit, folks. So when you think about that from this standpoint, you have to understand that this is monies that she has already been kind of gathering together for some period of time. They've gone into the campaign account now. She's got $1 million. We don't have a number yet on Alan Wilson. We don't have a number yet on Josh Kimbrell. We don't know, as of yet, who else is going to be getting in this race.
Ideas, but
we got some thoughts.
We got, the thought of Nancy Mace. You've got the thought of Ralph Norman. And so all of those tend to play themselves out. It is going to be an expensive race. And Catherine, to your point, it's going to be a crowded field.
It absolutely is. And so we have a number of different candidates who are really competing for that conservative vote. And the question here is also, is this going to be, is the lieutenant governor going to be McMaster 2.0, or is she going to bring something new to the race now that she's a candidate in her own right?
Yeah, in that roughly 17-minute speech or so, a lot of it was about we're going to continue the legacy of Henry McMaster, the work I've been doing with him since 2018, since she became part of his ticket. And also the other aspect of this, you say the crowded primary field, every single candidate has been going overboard with trying to align themselves with Donald Trump. We know that, and there's our 4 potentials there, because Nancy Mace hasn't declared yet, but we know she's probably going to here in the near future. But again, we talked about this a little bit last week, about the competition for the stamp of approval from the president. And I don't think he's going to step in anytime soon, because he's going to want to back a winning horse. And in the primary, that doesn't happen until the runoff.
It doesn't happen until the runoff. There are so many people who are vying for Donald Trump's stamp of approval. In her announcement, Pamela Evette basically wrapped herself as the MAGA candidate. You've got Alan Wilson, who had endorsed Donald Trump. You've had Nancy Mace, who's had an on and off again relationship with Donald Trump politically. And you've got Kimbrell, who had been backing DeSantis, and then when DeSantis dropped out of the race, went for Trump. But the word that we've been hearing is that he's not doing anything in this particular race right now. If it was Henry McMaster running again, absolutely.
Yep.
But there is no heir apparent yet. And we have a long way to go until the June primary. And now we're getting the intermix of also what goes on in national politics as people start coming into South Carolina with that. So if you're not used to politics, it's Sunday morning in South Carolina, and you're watching this show, but there's going to be even more that we're going to be talking about, especially over the next several months.
How big does the GOP field get? I know we mentioned Mace, we mentioned Norman. Is there another name out there we just haven't said yet that you've heard?
The only other name that I've heard thus far has been the potential of Sean Bennett.
Okay.
He is one. And then the founder of SC Doge has been floated around as another potential candidate. But keep in mind that you got an expensive millionaire with issues that he has with what's going on in South Carolina government. Is he going to get himself involved with that or not? Don't know yet.
Don't know yet. It's a long way to go. And we don't want to leave out the other side of the equation, the other side of the aisle, the Democrat Jermaine Johnson, sitting there all by himself right now. Hasn't officially declared that he's going to run, but right now it certainly looks that way. Formed an exploratory committee. The only one that we've heard from the Democratic side of things. We all like Jermaine Johnson. He's been on this show.
Absolutely.
But he could, right now it looks like he's the only guy that's part of this conversation.
I think when you look at Jermaine Johnson and you look at the Democrats in South Carolina, and I know we're going to be talking about this in a few minutes.
Yeah.
The Democrats are realizing in South Carolina right now, they cannot splinter themselves and waste the war chest on multiple races.
Absolutely.
You've got Lee Johnson, who had declared that he was going to be a Democrat running for the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that.
He is dropping out of that because he wants to be solidified behind one candidate. Keep in mind, when you are running for public office, you have to raise money. You have to raise money for two different cycles, as they call them. One is the primary. The second is the general election. And so there's a certain amount of capped money that can be raised for both of those. And to pour all of your money into a primary race and spend it all means that you're basically depleting the resources that should be there for what needs to be there for the general election.
That's exactly right, and especially because when it comes to the general election, what the Democrats are going to have to do is capitalize on that faction of South Carolinians who want change, who are itching for change, not really happy with Governor McMaster, and trying to bring some of those people into the Democratic Party fold. That will be interesting to see over the coming months as we kind of wait for Donald Trump to potentially weigh in, probably at the runoff stage or later in the game.
Yeah.
But for right now, we have this kind of balance going on where there may not be a lot of other Democrats who are wanting to wade in for strategic reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the race you mentioned just a moment ago, Lee Johnson, and that race for Senator Lindsey Graham's seat in the upstate of South Carolina. That's when we come back on Connect to the Capitol. All right, welcome back to Connect to the Capitol. Dave mentioned this in the previous segment. Lee Johnson, the upstate engineer, Democrat, who said in May, just 2 months ago, that he was going to run against Senator Lindsey Graham. As you can see, there was an ad made. Well, no need for the ad anymore, at least for Lee Johnson's purposes, because earlier this week he did say, after a lot of important conversations, he is dropping out of the race, saying it's time for the Democrats to be unified, something you said too, in a lot of different ways, financially, ideologically, specifically in a state that is all about the red vote. So that leaves Dr. Annie Andrews standing on the Democratic side of things, well-funded, for sure, Low Country pediatrician, made a failed bid for Congress against Nancy Mace just a few years ago, but she may be the only one on the Democratic side of things now. But again, that solidifies money.
It consolidates. And I think that that's what the Democrats are having to look at right now. How do we consolidate our energies and our efforts behind a singular candidate, spend the next year really bolstering that candidate, doing what needs to be done to raise money, seeing how weakened Lindsey Graham could be from primary challenges. I mean, keep in mind, Andre Bauer is a political workhorse.
He is.
When he ran for lieutenant governor, remember when he crashed? He was in an airplane crash.
How could I forget?
He was in an airplane crash during the campaign. And the next day, he is on crutches, still waving.
With a busted ankle, shattered ankle, I believe.
And it reminds us of Donald Trump raising his fist after getting shot.
Right, and so this is a place where Lindsey Graham's going to have a significant challenge of sorts from Andre Bauer. But keep in mind, South Carolina has a hard time letting go of our senators. I mean,
2003,
Fitz Hollings, Strom Thurmond were around forever. And then it was Jim DeMint for a while. And then Lindsey Graham took over one of those seats. And in my lifetime, I can name 5, maybe 6 U.S. senators that South Carolina has had in the last 53 years. That's not very many people, and we don't tend to flip those seats anywhere near as much as we'd see U.S. House seats, which we don't flip very often, and definitely House and Senate seats here in the state legislature.
Yeah, that's true. But on the other hand, South Carolina, we like senators who focus their attention domestically. And that's an area where Senator Graham is not putting as much focus right now. You know, trying to talk about sanctions on China, which would of course impact Russia, all the wrangling going on there because of the sanctions on Russia. They've become highly reliant on Chinese oil. And so China's hitting back hard on what Senator Graham is talking about, and all of this swirling around is not focusing on domestic policy, and especially on South Carolina itself.
Lindsey Graham is without a doubt one of the more vocal members of the U.S. Senate. You see him on every cable news program imaginable, every Sunday morning program. You'll probably see him here at some point. He's out there, but there is so much activity around this particular seat this time. I don't recall in recent memory there being this much activity, particularly from within his own party, with someone like Bauer, like you said.
Right.
A well-known commodity who is going to be well-funded, and people are going to vote for him. They are.
Well, it was back 2 cycles ago, so this would have been 12 years ago. In 2014, Graham was up for election, and every new Republican candidate that was getting into the race to challenge him, he basically looked at it and said, great, bring them all on, because that splintered the oppositional vote. You have a group of people who are diehard Lindsey fans. You have a lot of people who are diehard Lindsey haters. And that's just the way that it is in South Carolina politics. You either like Lindsey or you don't like Lindsey. And when it comes down to a choice in the end in the general election, he'll sweep against basically whoever it's going to be because of the choice. But the more people who get into the race against Graham, the more it splinters that oppositional vote, which is going to be an important part, because we're looking at, you have to have 50% plus 1 vote to be able to win. And so if he can keep it at 52% of people supporting him in a primary, then he'll blaze through. But the more people that you have in there, the more that splinters and gives him an opportunity to still win.
Yep. Well, coming up next, we've teased a little bit of this. The Democratic parade through the state of South Carolina. It's been going on since late May. It continued this past week. I have a feeling it will continue in the very near future. We just don't know who the part of the parade is going to be just yet. But that's what we...
there are a lot of people who have pulled out their dance cards trying to figure out
who's
can they make it in, who's next in South
We're
Carolina.
going to look at who has been so far when we come back.
Folks, my name is Andy Beshear. I'm the proud Democratic governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
And let me tell you something. That's quite an achievement in a traditionally red voting state of Kentucky. Burnt red. But Andy Beshear is a popular name out of the state of Kentucky, and this week he graced the state of South Carolina with his presence, made stops in Greenville, which that was there, also here in the Midlands, and was in Charleston on Thursday, mainly talking unions and how they are what America is all about. They are not what South Carolina is all about, though, at all.
That's right. You know, the Kentucky governor is very popular with moderates, with unions, with the working class. And so his presence here not only demonstrates that he's perhaps testing the waters on his own, but also that the Democratic Party is trying to strengthen their message to the working class vote, really courting that vote and trying to bring more folks in.
And that goes, Catherine, to your point of they're trying right now. The Democrats, I think, in South Carolina are trying everything they can to energize the base in this state. It can be very demoralizing, I think, sometimes to put candidates up and lose, especially in a really strong red state like South Carolina. When you have big names come in, though, it's like a pep rally in high school. Remember, you would get, are we going to be up against our rivals? Are we going to get ourselves geared up for this? And so in the last few weeks, we've had Governor Wes Moore out of Maryland, who spoke at the Democratic Party's Blue Palmetto fundraiser. We've had Gavin Newsom. We've now had Andy Beshear.
Tim Walz.
Tim Walz has come to South Carolina. That's four folks right there who are names on the national stage. They are also potential candidates in 2028 for the run for the White House. And South Carolina is a place that picks presidents. We talk about it every single week. 11 out of the last 12 presidential elections, we've chosen the nominee for both parties. That is a pivotal responsibility that South Carolina has. So we're going to be seeing more and more people on the Democratic side showing up, because I think the Democratic Party is trying to gear up, excite the base, and get people coming into South Carolina.
But here's the deal also, because when it comes to these Democrats, these national name Democrats coming through the state, South Carolinians, we're not going to want to just see people strolling through, giving their speeches, making their stump speeches, checking the box. We're going to want to see who's building the real infrastructure here to be able to sustain it, who's going to make a real commitment to the people of South Carolina in a way that will be meaningful and not just lip service to working class votes or religious moderates.
Yeah, I think the tour last week by Gavin Newsom, California's governor, speaks to that. He made 8 stops, largely in rural areas, largely GOP strongholds too, but going to those grassroots level type of organizations. He's going to, as Congressman Jim Clyburn pointed out when he was introducing him, he's going to go to your school board meeting. He was there. Tell me another presidential candidate that would have, well, excuse me, he's not one yet. I'm sorry.
Right.
But we know what we're doing here. Yeah.
Well, and that is where you look at these candidates that are coming in. No offense to Beshear here, but talking a union message in South Carolina doesn't play. It doesn't play. Now, it doesn't play to a whole base. Keep in mind, we have been union busting in this state for decades. Boeing tried to unionize somewhat.
Multiple times.
And multiple times. You've had it at BMW. You've had it in a number of different places. And it just doesn't play well here. And I think to come in here, you're kind of tone deaf if you want to energize a base in a state. You need to understand who those folks are and talk to them specifically.
That's right, because we're not there at this point. Whether unions are a good idea or not, that can be a conversation for another day, but that isn't the message you come in as a circuit riding politician, coming in to, spend a couple days, a week, making some stump speeches and then heading out to the next state. You're not going to be the right person to convince people to come down to the altar of the union.
Yeah, he'll be back.
Yeah.
He'll be listening to the analysis and he'll be back.
He will try again on some other day.
Yeah,
but
it's
going to be interesting to see how many people the Democrats are going to start bringing in here to energize the base. Because to your point a moment ago, it's now a focus right now politically on the midterm elections. Can they do something? The House is so tight between Republicans. There's only like a 2 or 3 vote split in Washington, D.C. And any change on that changes the entire balance of power. The big, beautiful bill gets through, the Epstein vote goes through, and all of these things are happening, and they're happening almost carte blanche being able to go through because you've got Republican control in House and Senate. If that flips, Washington, D.C. becomes a very different cauldron to start spinning around in.
Like you said, that's what this is all about. Pep rallies for the midterm elections and testing the waters for 2028.
Yeah.
Hey, we talk a lot about energizing the voting base. Coming up next, Congressman John Lewis, the late congressman, a rally at the State House this past week. He was all about the importance of the vote. We'll be talking about that when we come back.
We have to join that fight now. We have to be inspired by these individuals who are part of our past and become engaged in the work. That's the only way our freedoms will be protected.
And as the late Congressman John Lewis knew it, be engaged in good trouble. He was a champion for the vote. Not South Carolina's congressman, but certainly spent plenty of time here during the civil rights era of the 1960s. This was at the State House on Thursday, just talking about the importance of everyone having an access to the vote. And that's what we talk about here on this show. People getting involved, making your voices heard, and knowing what you're voting for and the issues. So a nice show of support there for all those things.
That's right. When we saw that hand coloring in, that poster resist, free speech the ability to have a rally like that and the right to vote are part of the fundamental bedrock of our nation. And so this rally, it not only honored the incredible legacy of John Lewis, but it also was a rallying cry. It was a clarion call to voters nationwide saying, do you like our political system? Do you like who's in power right now? Do you not? It's up to us. It's up to we the people to get out there and vote. And so it's a call for all voters, but perhaps especially black voters, to get out to the polls and register their preference so that we can have the political leadership that we deserve.
Yeah.
And it goes back to voter turnout. Voter turnout is always the highest in a presidential election. It is always the lowest when it comes to primaries and primary runoffs in the local community. We've talked about this stat before. There's 518,962 elected officials in America. We talk way too often about the people who are at the top of the ticket, the president, the vice president, members of Congress. Well, combined, that's only 537 people. What happens in your local elections, what happens at your state elections is extremely important. And the choice that you have as a voter when it comes to making those choices is the important part, because keep in mind, only about 1 out of every 11 people in South Carolina will show up on primary day in a particular party race. So when the Republicans and the Democrats are choosing who that governor candidate is going to be, or who's going to be the candidate for attorney general, or for your local House seat, those elections in June are extremely important. And if people show up, you've got a broader voice. If you don't like what's going on right now, you've got to bring other people to the polls with you. And that level of voter engagement, I think, is extremely important and needs to be emphasized over and over again. It is a privilege, it is a right that you need to exercise.
It's really a duty. And so no matter what candidate wins, which is also quite important, what we want is to see every South Carolinian, not only for the general, but also for the primary, proudly sporting their I voted sticker. And saying, yes, I participated in our political process. I made my voice heard, and then you just wait and pray for the results.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. One thing that some folks in the education field don't like right now, that they want to make their voice heard on, is $6 billion in funding nationwide, being reviewed right now by the U.S. Department of Education. $84 million of that is assigned to South Carolina. So we're not getting it right now. That accounts for roughly 13% of the money that the state got from the feds last year. So who knows if we're getting it. We're about to head into a new school year. We only got about a minute and a half left, but this is a critical issue. We know we have a lot of friends in education and they worry about this.
It really is a critical issue. And this could also turn into a campaign issue, especially if some of these rural or lower income schools start feeling that pinch.
There's 76, 78 school districts in South Carolina. So if you do the math on this, the simple math on this real quick, if you can do that educationally, then you're talking almost $1 million per school district on average that you're losing on that. And that's a lot of money when you talk about teachers. When we talk about increasing teacher pay, which has been a commitment that the state of South Carolina has said, we're going to be taking our starting teacher pay to $50,000 a year. We're at $48.5 now, I think was done in the most recent budget. But imagine this, $84 million is now siphoned out that's going to be coming in. So we're basically losing all those funds right now unless they get unfrozen quickly.
It's a 90-day review period. Who knows what happens after the 90 days, because no official timeline was set by the federal government. So it is a wait-and-see issue. We'll probably have some of our friends from the education field back in here as the months and weeks go on, and that continues because, they're going to be going into this year potentially without $84 million on the table to be used for some vital programs. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Connect to the Capitol. We'll be back here again next Sunday to get you up to speed. We hope you have a great week.
Have a great Sunday.